Welcome back to the podcast with your host, Samantha.
And I'm Alexa. We're here to light up your life.
Today we have an incredible guest. We're sitting down with Nada Nasserdeen, an internationally recognized expert in leadership, confidence, and emotional intelligence. She's a 2-time TEDx speaker, a #1 bestselling author, and the founder of Rise Up For You, which is a transformational organization dedicated to helping individuals and companies reach their highest potential. Nada has worked with leaders all across the world, helping them with their confidence, strengthening their teams, and creating lasting impact.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, we're so excited. I wanted to really find out what inspired your passion that led you to become an expert in leadership, confidence, and emotional intelligence.
Okay, so that's a long story, but I'll make it short. So actually, it started way back when I was a performer. So the first career I ever had, I used to tour the world internationally as a singer and a dancer. And I did, like musical theater and that kind of stuff. And I noticed that whenever I would walk into a room as a performer, there was always, 400 or 500, hundreds of performers at any given time. And I was always the best performer, but I was never the best singer. So there were always people in the room that can sing me out of the water, that were way better technically. But for some reason, I got the diva center stage spot, like they called it. So I started to ask myself, if they sing better than me, their technique was better than me, how come I'm the one that's being chosen to be in the middle? What am I displaying or what am I doing that's creating that? So that's where I started to think about, okay, there's something more beyond my degree or my technical skill that I've built. Then fast forward, I became the executive of an education corporation. So I was 27 years old and I had about 200 team members under me at the time. And I noticed that the same thing was happening. People that were really highly qualified, that had PhDs, master's degrees, you name it, they were really struggling to find success, not only personally, but professionally, even though they had all the skills and the degrees that they need. They struggled with communication. They struggled with climbing the career ladder. They struggled with self-doubt. And I was trying to understand why that was happening. In the same moment, in the evening, I was a professor for college. And I saw the same thing happening to the kids when I taught in the evening. These kids were coming into college and more, they had a hard time raising their hand and asking a question. They would rather take an F. They struggled with anxiety and depression. They didn't know who they were. They didn't have values. They were just struggling as a whole. So I started to recognize that we have a really big gap in society, not only in the corporate workplace, but also when it comes to education around these skills that we call soft skills. So what are the soft skills? It's the social and emotional intelligence skills that we learn that actually make up anywhere between 75 to 80% of our success. So I started to recognize this gap. I didn't know what to do much about it other than add value in my own way. So at the college, I built a soft skills class. I went to the college and I said, we need to teach these kids confidence. We need to teach them how to manage their stress. And so I built the class there. And then I just coached and mentored as an executive. And then God kind of kicked me in the teeth, but it was a blessing. So after about 4.5 years of being an executive, I decided to resign from the company and sell my car and my luxury house and all the things that I had. And I moved out of the country for an opportunity called love. And I got married. And after about 4 weeks of marriage, our marriage came crumbling down and we were headed towards divorce. So in that 4 weeks, I lost everything. I went from a 6-figure executive, house on the lake, brand new luxury car, all the things that we think are success to $100. That's all I had. That's it. Everything just came crashing down. So I got back on a plane and I was bawling. I was very embarrassed. I was crying. I felt stupid, to tell you the truth. How does an educated woman end up in this position, right? How did I get into this situation? So I fell asleep on the plane because I was just so emotional and crying so much. And I really didn't know what was happening. I was still processing. It was a lot of energy for me. And my father came to me in my dream. My dad died when I was 27 years old. He had 6 heart attacks. He wasn't a heavy guy. He just had a lot of stress. And he came to me in my dream and he said, Nada, everything you need is already inside of you. You just have to rise up for you. Yeah. So today, that's the company that I own, Rise Up For You. I got back to California and I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. I didn't know anything about business. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's going to be Rise Up For You. And I really just started building. And so I started to ask myself, what am I good at and what do I know? So I know that there's a problem with these skills because I knew them before I went through, the divorce and all that. So I knew that there was a gap here, and most people didn't really understand why they weren't successful in life, why they don't feel fulfilled. People are always trying to find that fulfillment and that happiness, but they don't recognize where it stems from and where they get it from. And then what am I good at? Well, I'm really good on stage because I used to be a performer, and I'm really good with teaching. That's I was a professor. I'm good at those things. So I started building this company, Rise Up For You. Again, knew nothing about business. About 3 months later, my second parent, my mom, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I built my company out of a hospital. I took showers at the 24-Hour Fitness. I would go back to the hospital, open up my laptop. How do you build a business? Who's Tony Robbins? What's coaching and training? Like, what do people need in the world? How do I take what I know and the soft skills and how do I make a business out of this? And I just started researching. And believe it or not, I was actually using the soft skills to rebuild myself at the same time that I was building a company on soft skills, right? So it was like I was mirroring myself hand in hand. So 9 months later, my mother died. I was 31 years old. I lost both of my parents, broken from the divorce, and I really had nothing. And a lot of the things that we teach today around the world are blueprints and strategies that I've also used myself to pick myself back up. And today, the company is in over 50 countries with our programming. I have a team of about 20 right now throughout North America. And every day we go into companies, we work with entrepreneurs, we work with leaders, and we help them be like the top 10% as a person, not just in their career, but as a person, by like really empowering them and cultivating these skills within them that no one ever really teaches you in life.
Wow, that is such a profound story. You definitely have me tearing up with everything that you went through. I can't even imagine all of that. But I really wanted to focus and talk about your book, Rise Up For You, and talking about closing that gap from where we are from where we are right now to where we want to be. What do you think is that common denominator that most people are missing or holding them back from their fullest potential?
So the biggest problem, sometimes I get pushback on this, but it's really important to break it down like this because there's a lot of influencers out there who are amazing, but I disagree with how they explain this. The biggest problem is self-confidence. My team and I, every single year, we ask about 4,000 to 5,000 professionals, both in the corporate world and entrepreneurs, what their number one challenge is. 83% say self-confidence. So the book that you have there, Samantha, Rise Up For You, it's about closing your potential gap. Thank you. It's about closing the gap between your potential, starting with cultivating that self-confidence. And so it's really important for everyone to understand that you have two types of confidence, right? And this is where it gets a little bit muddy on social media. You have confidence just in general, okay? And then you have self-confidence. Confidence in general is what I call micro-confidence, which is also in the book, meaning that we have confidence in like skills. We have confidence in talents. So for example, I'm very confident as a singer. I worked my whole life. I crafted it. I studied it. I would sit in the mirror for hours at a time and practice my vocal range. I'm really confident as a speaker. I've studied it. I prepared. I practiced speaking. But you're confident in these skills that kind of exist outside of you. And anything that exists outside of you inevitably can and will change. So for example, let's say, God forbid, I lost my voice tomorrow. Well, I no longer have that skill that I'm confident in. Can't speak, can't sing, right? This is what we saw during COVID. People had a lot of confidence in these skills, and then COVID kind of kicked everybody in the butt. People lost their job, they lost home, they lost title, they lost stature. And then people would come to us and say, who am I? What value do I add to the world? And that's because they never really created the self-confidence, which is the other side, what I call the macro confidence. And self-confidence is an inner belief in yourself that you have the ability to learn. It's an inner belief that you are enough simply because you exist. It's an inner belief that perfectionism prevents you from your potential. It's an inner belief that failure is research to success. So your identity is not attached to any job, title, persona. Your identity is attached to the core and the self-love that you have within. And most people do not have that. Most people, and they don't even know that it's self-confidence. What they know is, I struggle with self-doubt. I struggle with perfectionist mindset. I struggle with people pleasing. I struggle with healthy boundaries. I struggle with imposter syndrome. I struggle with not feeling enough, even though I have amazing success and I reach my goals, I still don't feel enough. All of those things are confidence crushers that impact how we feel internally about ourselves.
Yeah, that is very true. And so what is one strategy from Rise Up for you that listeners can implement today to step into their full potential?
Okay, I'm going to give you the hardest one because it's the most transformative. It's not cookie cutter and it's not something that will happen overnight. But I will tell you that if you do this for the next 60 to 90 days, you will see a significant shift in your self-confidence. And just so that people understand the ROI of it, because it's okay, I have more self-confidence. Now what? Self-confidence enables you to communicate effectively, right? So if you want to get a job promotion, self-confidence allows you to be seen, be heard, and be relevant in the workplace or as an entrepreneur. Self-confidence helps you close more sales when you're confident and you're clear on what you want. Self-confidence helps you create healthy boundaries so that you keep negative energy out of your life. All of these things lead to a higher ROI, not only from a self perspective, but from a monetary perspective, from a relationship perspective, right? So it can really change your life as a whole. So the one strategy that I will tell you, it's called the 4 B's to believing and betting on you. Okay. And it's a reverse engineering exercise. So this is where we talk about neuroplasticity and your brain can change. So, a lot of us, actually all of us have negative thoughts. Everyone, even me. Okay. Actually, we have thousands of thoughts a day and 80% of them are negative. Everyone, even Tony Robbins, right? Yeah. So the goal is to be able to become aware of some of the beliefs that are limiting you, right? They're hindering you from taking action. Because when we struggle with self-confidence, it cripples us. And then when it cripples us, we don't move forward. So just to give a simple example, because I know a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs, and women watch the show. How many of us listening, or if you're listening right now, you know that you need to be online doing video because that's the new world of business, and you don't do video because you're afraid of what people are going to think about you. You're afraid that people are going to judge you. You're afraid that people are going to leave nasty comments about who is this person doing this video? Who do you think you are? So all of those limiting beliefs impact our ability to do what we know needs to be done. That's just a small example because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that struggle with that, right? So the first step is the 4 B's is the belief. What's the limiting belief that you currently have that's getting in your way? Now, we all have a ton, but I just want you to identify one. What's one right now that you can say this is getting in the way of me taking action. This is getting in the way of me having a healthy relationship with my partner, whatever it is. Just one, write it down. Okay. Then the second B is the backstory. So do either of you have kids yet?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So think of kids, right? Little babies. They're beautiful. They're amazing. I have 2 nephews. When they are born, they're unstoppable. They just go for it, right? And that's why we have to tell them don't touch the stove because they just jump, right? And so when kids are born, they're unstoppable. They have confidence. They're just so curious. But over time, somebody says, no, don't do that. No, who do you think you are? You're stupid. Sit down. Don't do this. And now we're 20, we're 30, we're 40, and all those beliefs that were projected onto us by other people, our parents, our siblings, our teachers, the first boyfriend or girlfriend we've ever had, the first leader that we've ever had in the workplace, all of those beliefs that they had because they were also struggling with self-confidence that they threw onto us as we were growing up, we now have in this backpack, and we're walking around with all of these negative beliefs that are holding us down, and most of them don't even belong to us. So the second B is the backstory and understanding, where does this belief come from? Why do I feel like I'm not enough no matter how much success I build? Why do I have that belief? Why do I have a belief that I'm never good enough for my partner? Even though every morning I wake up and I do put my best foot forward, I still feel like I'm a crappy wife or a husband or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is. Why do I have that belief? Where does it come from? The third B is the behavior. What's the behavior that it's causing? I always say that I know before someone even opens their mouth how they feel about themselves, because your belief system manifests into behaviors, right? Your beliefs dictate how you behave, how you walk into a room, how you sit, how you look people in the eye, how you dress and you put yourself together, the self-respect that you show physically and when you're, introducing yourself to people and shaking someone's hand. All of those behaviors tell me how this person feels about themselves. And so the question is, what is the behavior that is being caused that's sabotaging you? So it can look like this. The behavior is procrastination. I know I need to do these things to grow my business and I just haven't done it yet. That's a behavior. The behavior is not raising your hand in a meeting, even though you really have something to say, but you don't raise your hand because you're like, oh, what if they think it's stupid? Or what if I say something and they don't agree with me? Those are all behaviors that we either do or don't do that impact us moving forward. And the last B is the breaking. It's like, now how do I break this limiting belief that is causing this behavior that is sabotaging me? And the breaking is a little bit different for everyone because we're all different, right? It's not cookie cutter. Sometimes people need to go deep down and there's a lot of trauma and they need to go to therapy and they need to dig that up first, right? And a lot of other times it's more just about empowering. Once you do that exercise, you realize that Bobby J from 10th grade that bullied you is the reason why you don't feel enough. And 30 years later, Bobby J is impacting you from growing your business or getting a promotion. And when people discover that, it's like this empowerment feeling of, oh my gosh, I gotta let Bobby J go. Right? Bobby J made me feel like I wasn't enough. And for 25 years, I've been carrying that I'm not enough because they threw me in a trash can. And now I could barely raise my hand in a meeting because of that, that situation that I went through. So for some of us, it's that easy to break it once we identify the pattern and the history of the belief.
Yeah, that is true. And there's so much to unpack there. It's really crazy that so many of us adults are walking through life carrying these limiting beliefs. And to your point, it is all stem from childhood because 95% of our subconscious mind is created by the 18.
That's right.
And so it's really unlearning those thoughts that people projected onto us. What would you say is one quick step or one thing that someone could do to instantly gain confidence?
So there isn't one that can instantly gain confidence. Just to be very transparent, it's not something that happens overnight. But what I would say I would recommend to do instantly is to start having some time of silence to build self-awareness. It's hard to build self-confidence when you don't have time with yourself. And I think that's a big thing that I hear all the time. Well, I just don't have time. I don't have time to read. I don't have time to journal. I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to do this. And I always say that busy blocks your blessings, right? I don't know one person in the world that's not busy. I'm busy, you're busy, the whole world is busy. And it's not going to get any less busy, right? It's like when I was a teacher and my students would be like, I'm so busy. I'm like, really? You're not a parent yet. You don't have kids. You don't have a job. Trust me, right? So it's a mindset. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing to really build self-confidence that everyone can do right now instantly is carve out just 15 minutes. 15 minutes in silence by yourself. No kids, no partner. Carve it out. And here's the thing. If you have a hard time carving out 15 minutes, if you say, I just don't have time, or my kids come in, then that means that you struggle with creating healthy boundaries, right? I'm getting married in a couple weeks, and my partner and I, we've already talked about this. I'm like, babe, my morning, 30 minutes is us all mine. He's like, got it. I need my safe space. We bought a house. I created my safe space already. Because if I'm not good for him. I'm not good for the kid. It's so the first thing to do is create that space where you can be by yourself for 15 minutes so you can start to build the self-awareness around your beliefs. Okay, why do you feel a certain way? Write them down, think about it, go through the 4 Bs that I just mentioned. And then the one thing that helps me, it might not help everybody, but it helps me that's more quick, Samantha, something a little bit more instant, is put on a hot ass outfit that you love. Put on an outfit that you look in the mirror and you're like, I look great. Because that's an instant piece of dopamine for you, right? It's not sustainable, but it's instant. And so if you do that every day, during COVID, I went full out hair, makeup, and outfit every day, even though I was sitting in my bedroom with my laptop, because it just helped me feel good about myself. That I'm doing this for me and I feel comfortable in my skin and I'm happy with the way that I look. So I would say that that's something that you can do instantly. Go find a cool outfit, put it on, do your hair, makeup, whatever it is. And I call it the alter ego, feel good about who you are and what you're doing.
First of all, congratulations on getting married.
Thank you.
That's exciting. And then it is absolutely so true. You can't pour from an empty cup. I think it's so important that you take time for yourself and you take care of your own needs before you care for your family or others, and setting those healthy boundaries. Transitioning over, I know you had a new book just come out called Emotional Intelligence. It's right in the back of you. We didn't get a chance to get a copy yet, but that's very exciting. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know that book dives deep into emotional intelligence. So why do you believe that EQ is the real differentiator in leadership today?
So emotional intelligence is very, very misunderstood. And it's my mission to really get this out because our whole world can change in a positive way if we really double down and start cultivating it. Emotional intelligence makes up about 75 to 80% of our success. And I know we talked about that, like a little bit earlier. And it's really the backbone behind everything that you do and who you are. So just to break it down in simple terms, there's 4, think of it like a tree. Okay. We have this tree and there's 4 big branches on the tree. One branch is self-awareness. One branch is self-management. Another branch is social awareness. And the 4th branch is relationship management. The first 2 branches have to do with yourself. How, and am I aware of myself? This is where self-confidence comes in. It's under that self-awareness. Am I aware of myself? Am I aware of my emotions? Am I showing up the way that I think I am? Do I have blind spots? People say that I'm acting like this, but I don't see it. So it's accurate self-assessment, self-confidence, and the awareness that I have emotionally within me. That second pillar, self-management, this is where action happens. Self-management is, am I able to manage my behaviors? When I do feel stressed, can I manage it so that I don't become this crazy person that's yelling at everybody that's triggered? If I do have self-doubt, which we all have, if I do struggle with a limiting belief, am I able to manage it so that it doesn't sabotage me, but in fact, it can serve me? So I still take action even though I'm afraid. You see, can I manage it? Growth mindset is under self-management. I don't know this skill. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I believe that I can learn it, and therefore I'm going to learn it. So those first 2 pillars have to do with just you. The next 2 pillars have to do with you and how you socialize and connect and build relationships with people. This is where all things leadership come into play. So social awareness is empathy. Can I put myself in somebody else's shoes and truly understand and empathize with their situation? It's all things nonverbal communication. How do I read a room? If I walk into a room with 1,000 people, how do I play my energy? How do I show up? If I'm in a different country culturally, do I know how to shift my mannerisms accordingly? And this is also where service comes into play. Social awareness is, can I be a person of service versus a person of taking? Then that last pillar, relationship management, is all things leadership. How do you coach and mentor? Your ability to manage conflict, your ability to influence in your communication. It's one thing to communicate, and it's another thing to create movement with your communication. People feel empowered and influenced by you, whether it's stakeholders, prospects that you're trying to close, board members that you're trying to take, on a certain vision as a leader, influential communication. This is also where just traditional leadership comes into play. How do I lead my team so that they want to follow me? So as you can see, everything that I just mentioned, that's all leadership. And if a leader struggles with self-confidence, how are they going to coach a team member? If a leader struggles with stress management, how are they going to influence and lead effectively? It's all intertwined.
I truly believe that leadership starts with you. And if you can't lead yourself, then you definitely can't lead other people.
100%.
Yeah. And so you talk a lot about shifting organizational challenges into opportunities for innovation, which I love. So can you share an example of a success story that you've had with that?
Well, absolutely. I could share a number of them. Well, I'll give you one. I'll give you an extreme one, because this is how transformative this work can be. We had a client that was an executive of a mortgage company. Anyone that's familiar with the loan and mortgage, it's high stress, because it's you gotta hit those quotas, right? You got to make those loans, push the mortgages. And so we had an executive that was actually forced to do executive coaching because they had a really bad temper and they were the best salesperson in the company. So they were put into this leadership position, which we see a lot, because of the best in sales. So they're like, hey, here you go. You have this team under you. but they weren't really great with managing their temper. So the culture was being destroyed and the team was scared of the leader because he would throw chairs in a meeting. If they didn't hit their sales quota, like he flew off the handle. And so he was forced to come to us. This was like 2 years ago when I was still coaching, right? Now I have a team, they do most of it, but I'm still in the trenches. And I remember him getting on the call. I'm like, all right, how are you today? And he was like, I don't want to be here. I'm not interested in coaching. I'm forced to be here. There's nothing wrong with me. So whatever. I mean, just do your thing. Like, hey, not a problem. And through my emotional intelligence, which I also have to exercise, right, as a leader, as a coach, by the end of that 30-minute session, I was able to shift him in a positive way to say, okay, like I think I can, there's things here that I could definitely use. And there's some coaching that I'd be open to. I'm like, awesome. After the full 6 months of coaching, we had 12 sessions together because we always assess in the beginning, like we do benchmarks in the beginning. We do benchmarks at the end. His scores as a leader skyrocketed because he was assessed by his team. Like we gave it to his team. Within 6 months, they saw a significant shift in him as a leader. And he also saw a significant shift in himself. He said, like, I was so resistant, but I'm pretty impressed by how you were able to get me through to the other side and make some strong movement.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I think so much of it has to do with attitude. It sounded like he had a very negative attitude going in, and it speaks a lot to your communication and the way that you were able to be persuasive because you were able to coach him through it. What would you say is a common mistake that leaders make when trying to build stronger teams, and how can they course correct?
Yeah, there's a couple things I would say. And I also speak from experience because I used to be an executive. I had, 200 people under me when I was 27. So, and I'm a leader now that is also a business owner, right? And no one ever really talks about that. It's like, you're the leader, but you also built the company. There's a different complexity to leadership, right? When you have more stake in the game because you built it.
Yeah.
And so the couple things that I would say is that as a leader, sometimes we forget that our team is not like us, right? So for example, I'm pretty high performing. I move fast paced. Like I just get at it every single day. And I expect sometimes my team to be the same, but they're not the same and they function a little bit differently. And so then I have to provide different tools to help them get there or different tools to coach or mentor them. Another thing is like the way that people learn. So I love to read. I love to highlight my books where not all my team members are like that. They don't learn that way. They learn by me like sending them an audio message or by Audible or by me sending a video, and then they get the concepts and they get the points and they're more likely to take action. So I think one thing is understanding that your team is different when it comes to learning. And as leaders, it's our responsibility to figure out like what's the tool or the method that's going to make the biggest and the greatest impact. The second thing that I would say for leaders, and this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but you got to look in the mirror. You have to look in the mirror because I'll tell you right now, if your team is not performing, it's your fault. You've got to be able to take ownership. When I have a team member that's not succeeding, I'm like, this is my fault because either I wasn't clear enough or I hired the wrong person that's not a fit for our values, right? Or I gave too much, didn't give enough. Like I constantly am examining like how am I showing up as a leader because my team is reflective of, again, my behaviors and how I'm leading and how I'm showing up. And I think all too many times there's a lot of leaders that just like point the fingers. Well, they're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this. And I'm like, listen, if the majority of your team aren't performing, it's probably because of you as the leader. And now what can you do to take ownership to shift and influence that?
Yeah, that is so true. I find a lot of great leaders take a look in the mirror and they're willing to get feedback and grow. Leaders are always willing to learn. And when they stop learning and they think they know everything, their leadership goes back to zero. So if you can just give one piece of advice to entrepreneurs or executives or leaders to elevate their leadership, what would it be?
I would say the first piece of advice is get some feedback. Get some really strong feedback right now. I mean, it doesn't have to be complex. Like we have very robust assessments online that are free that people can take and I can share a little bit later. But you can simply find 5 to 7 people in your phone, some family, some that you work with, some that are clients, and just ask a simple question. What's one thing you see in me that I don't see in myself? Just start to get a little bit of feedback to better understand. You're going to be surprised by some of the answers. Some of the answers you're not going to like, and some of them you're going to be like pleasantly surprised by. But the more, as a leader, the more data we can collect about ourselves, the more possibilities we have for growth, because we're starting to build the awareness around how we're showing up and how and who we truly are. Something that's really important to mention is that 95% of people think they're self-aware and only 10% are. And so that's why it's important to start with some questions with friends and family, right? Hey, what do you see in me that I don't see in myself? Is there one thing that I do that maybe I'm not conscious of that you see in me? And just start to gather and look at what you're receiving and what you're getting. If you want to make it simple, you can go to our website, riseitfree.com. Up at the top, there's a tab that says free resources. And when you click on it, there's an emotional intelligence quiz. It's totally free. You can take the quiz and then you can ask 5 people, can you take this for me? And you can see the delta between your scores and what they put about you.
Thank you for sharing that with our listeners. That is a wonderful opportunity, because you are right that so many of us don't take that deep look inside. And probably to your earlier point, don't spend enough time with ourselves. We're so busy chasing the next thing and constantly running with very limited visibility in front of us. So again, highlighting to get to know yourself, have that deeper reflection, and connect with yourself.
Yeah, I have a quick question going off of what Alexa just said. You talked about if you don't have 15 minutes for yourself, then you have problems setting boundaries. Can you share with our audience one boundary that people can put in place that would help them manage their time better and start creating self-worth, self-love, and inner belief in themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first boundary is people. Jim Rohn says this, it's not my quote, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right? But most people don't really do a people check. And that's what breaks a lot of our boundaries, is that we let people in our lives that have toxic and negative energy. They pull you down, and it impacts not only how you feel about yourself, but also your energy. Ladies, how many times have you been around someone and then you leave and you're like, oh my gosh, I am so tired, because they literally just sucked the life out of you. Right?
Vampires, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so I don't believe in canceling people out. It's not a part of my values, but I do believe in putting strong boundaries up, even if it's with family, where you minimize your time around that. Some of us have family members that are really negative that put us down. I'm not going to tell you to cancel your mom out of your life, but I will tell you, you don't got to call them every single day or see them every day if it's constantly making an impact on you. So the first thing that I would do is do an energy check about the people that are around you, and start to minimize your time around the people that don't make you feel great, and start to elevate your time around the people that are they're going somewhere and you want to follow them and you're excited to see them succeed. And they also make you feel like you want to succeed in life as a person, whatever that is. I always say, never take advice from someone you don't admire, right? And a lot of us have friends and people around us that are putting us down, and we listen to them, but we don't want their life. We don't admire them, And so I think starting to have a boundary like that around people is really good. And then learning to say in a kind way, thank you for thinking of me, but at this time I cannot take that on. I'm at full capacity. Or, babe, I love you and I love our children, but I don't feel like I'm my best right now. I need 10 minutes by myself in the morning. Can you please be with the kids for 10 minutes. Learning how to communicate a boundary is critical, and it doesn't have to be mean. It doesn't have to be no, and I don't need to give you an answer. I don't believe in that, because that's not emotionally intelligent. Remember, influential communication. Influential communication is, I love you so much. I feel like I'm burning out and that I don't have time for myself. I can't recognize myself in the mirror right now. I need 15 minutes of silence where I can be alone and I can reconnect with who I am, so that I can be a good wife, I could be a good parent, I could be good for me. See, that's more influential than, I need 15 minutes, leave me alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where communication comes in, telling your significant other, your friend, I have this going on and I need time for me. And people are going to be very understanding. I love the point where you said you have to take inventory of your energy and surround yourself with people who make you feel like your best self. And I've definitely had to do that in my life and set boundaries with people. This has been such a great episode, Nada. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And so For our listeners, if they want to learn more about you and connect with you, where can they find you?
Okay, there's a couple places. So I'm all over social media on every platform, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. We have a podcast. Everything is at Rise Up For You. That's the name of the company. And then you can also find me personally, Nada Nasserdeen. I know you'll put it in the show notes because it's Middle Eastern, so it's a long name. And I personally run my own social media. So if you message me on Instagram or if you message me on LinkedIn, I will respond. And then the company Rise Up For You, we have teams there. We have tons of content. So we would love to connect and learn more and say hi to you.
Absolutely. We'll definitely link everything in the show notes that you just mentioned. And we're sending our listeners so much love and light.